Left incinerator. Okay, we're back. I'm sorry. My PC needed to update, and it decided it was going to update. There was nothing I could do about it besides let it update. So I let it update. Yay. Awesome, right? Anyway, anywho, we're gonna do this edit and then see how I feel afterwards. Let's keep that lower. I gotta fix that anyway, personally. We got three clips to look at today. I'm a superstar, and my daydreams are killing me. Seem like I'm losing my mind. We'll never see you again. Some things are so hard to follow. Crying the people for trying. Until my grave, just let me fall to my, just let me fall to my grave. Don't keep me from dying. Guide me like a star. Don't keep me from dying. Just let me fall to my grave. Don't keep me from dying. Be like a star. Don't keep me from dying. Girl, just let me fall to. On the way to birthdays will last forever. You'll have to be sweet on the fast on the coming. Only one step from dying, my age of 2, they blame the people for trying. Just let me fall to my grave. Just let me fall to my grave. Keep me from dying. Girl, in a life star. I know I can't sing. I can't sing for shit. But you know what? I like to sing. I can't sing. I can't hear myself sing. But like in my mind, I am fucking amazing. I am a star. I got pipes. I can belt it out. But like, I would never want to do it professionally. That's too much. What? It fucking crashed? That was just weird. I think, cause like I'm not in a rush to beat up my body, and beating up my body with powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. I'm not let me find, take me back, feeling fine, so relating to you. Another year, and We both know the score. We've been here once before. The many words unspoken. It took my heart that's already broken. And you don't have to wait. I can feel the pain. I can to swim and go on a new adventure. Actually, I'll just grab the long clip instead of the two small ones. You know what? No, I want to see if there's anything worth. Because my time has been down and not a lot. I don't know how to say. I don't know how to say my place. You find your peace of mind. And if not, let's waste your time. Don't run it away. Another day. We both know the score. We've been here once before. No many words unspoken. It took my heart, it's already broken. You don't have to wait. I can feel the pain. I will surrender, let it go on a new adventure. Okay, so that's an hour and a half. Remind me dancing on my own, nowhere to be, nowhere to go. Rhythm, I don't think of you. Every time if I'm feeling blue, you got me dancing on my own, nowhere to be, nowhere to go. Rhythm, I don't think of you. Let me go. It's a new adventure. I do wish I could sing, because there's a couple of songs that I would love to just really rip into and just fucking go ham and just like pour. Like I liked music primarily because it shows complexity of emotion, and so you can show a wide range of emotions in a single song, and like I love that. Like, here, I'll show you something what I'm talking about. Ooh, here's a good one. Is there a window? What the hell? There you go. There we go. Alright. I'm gonna render this whole thing. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Quick export. This is nice. So many days. Just had it. Going my ways. Take the quick export, and then we will go into the and take that whole export and then chop it down. Cause like I should do that. I should take everything, all the clips, put them together, and then go into the big video and cut it piece by piece. Or is it this one? I think it's this one. You're not the only one. No one loves you like to. You let me mess it to me with the pieces. Whoa. Now I'm about to burn up the bridges between us. Oh, I can't focus. I can't forget. I've been making that much lately. I need to clear my head. I need to clear my head. That's not the song though. Ugh. It's gotta be this one, I think. Cause she fucking just belts this shit. I may think not gonna meet you in a how. You can't see me with a finger in the head. What times that I can't get out. And down in the deep of my mind, I'll close for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, I'll come for you to keep you, to keep you. And down in the deep of my mind, I'll come for you and you're always down in the deep of my mind, I do the way not to keep you, to keep you. Ooh, yeah. I used the way not to keep you, to keep you. Ooh. I don't know why not to keep you, to keep you. Like, my deal is, I will switch all of my workouts around except for my squat day. Most meatheads and iron bros and whatever, they like to start their Mondays out with bench. Personally, I don't. I find bench for me on Mondays to be the weakest of my lifts, whereas me squatting on a Monday is by far I'm the strongest in the week I will be. I am my peak on a Monday. And it's simply because I hate Mondays and I tend to work the hardest I possibly can on Mondays. It just doesn't vibe with bench for me. So I switched it to squat and deadlift. I'll alternate them depending on how I feel or like what I'm prepping for. I'm falling the shit more times than I get. Yep, this is it. This is it. Here we go. To keep you down on the deep of my mind. I love for you when you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, though I used to wait not to keep you, Oh, skip. Ooh, yeah. I used to wait not to keep you, Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, yeah. God, I wish I could fucking sing. Cause I would love to sing this. Yeah! Like, I love when a vocalist just goes in on the song that they're doing. And like, they bring passion, they bring fire, they bring everything to that song, and they just leave it there. And like, I love shit like that. Like, shit like that gives me joy to see. It gives me joy and it's my honor to experience that more so than anything else. It's my honor to have the capacity to witness that, you know, because to me that's a big fucking deal. That's a big fucking deal. I mean, I could also be off too, so there's that. You know, being a silly Billy and all that. And then this is like, this is my song. I fucking love this song, like, a lot. I'm a beautiful queen. I'm a beautiful queen. You're a beautiful queen. You can be Do the hammering ball. 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 Get it. Yes. Let's go. Yes. Look at that. I gotta keep on. Yeah. I never saw it gonna get on, but it's half 'cause you're pretty. I want more. I wanna know I just woke up. I don't know I just woke up. Look at what we both got. Look at what we both got. Look at what we both got. I gotta keep on. I know I just woke up. I know I just woke up. I gotta keep on. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let it hammering ball. Let's go. Let's go. Let it hammering ball. Yes. 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 Yeah. I was hoping that guy someone. Go give him a hack, cause you gonna put him on. Gotta keep on. I know that's how they have skin tone. Ah, cause you're a pretty one. I know I keep on. I know I just woke up. I know I just woke up. Look what we both got. Look what we both got. Look what we both got. I gotta keep on. Yeah, I know I. That's so long. I'm gonna find something on YouTube to watch. I don't want to play a game because I don't want that to mess up the export, the rendering. That's the word I was looking for. Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me. All right.
Democrats must unite around focusing on passing the climate agenda that President Biden has proposed, no matter what that takes, no matter what it requires to be split off of the big Build Back Better bill. That's my view. President Biden is now open to splitting the major domestic policy agenda into separate climate and social safety net bills, despite the wishes of many progressive groups. I want to see what two lawmakers who would have to make that legislation a reality think of this strategy. Senator Ed Markey, a Democrat of Massachusetts who sits on the Environment and Public Works Committee, and Congressman Ro Khanna, a Democrat of California who chairs the Oversight and Environmental Subcommittee, and both join me now. Senator Markey, do you agree that climate should be prioritized above everything else, and you do whatever you can to salvage that portion of this legislation?
I agree with Joe Biden. We should prioritize climate. It's largely been negotiated. The financing is there, and we should use it as the foundation. And then if we can get the 50 votes on any other family protection provisions in the Build Back Better bill, we should add that in as well. But climate should be the foundation. And then it's absolutely imperative that we set a deadline, that we use the State of the Union address on March 1st as the deadline to get it done. We should bring a bill out in February onto the floor of the United States Senate. The time for talking is over. It's now a time for action. The time for negotiation is over. It's now time to reach an agreement. And so from my perspective, climate has to be the foundation. It's the healthcare, environmental, economic, national security, and moral issue of our time. And we cannot miss this historic moment. We can reach an agreement on that issue. Joe Manchin said it's the easiest area for him to reach an agreement. Yep. We should take him at his word, reach that agreement, and add in whatever else we can get on the social issues.
Yeah, we should note that the climate, just in case people think this is wishful thinking, the climate portion of the bill, the $500 billion, already went through a kind of like Manchin washing, where a bunch of stuff that he objected to got taken out, including things that I really support. I think both of you support. The clean energy standard got taken out. I think we should have it in. But you know what? You can't get a vote for it. You can't get a vote for it. Congressman Khanna, do you agree with this strategy?
I do. Chris, let me just say, because I rarely am on with Senator Markey, no one has done more for the climate in the entire Senate or House than he has. But climate will be the foundation for what we come up with. It's going to be about $500 billion. As you said, Senator Manchin is on board with that. It will be the largest investment in climate that the United States government has ever made. My view is, and I have a good relationship with Senator Manchin, let's give him a chance to say what he is for. I think he's going to be for not just climate, but universal preschool. He's actually for raising taxes on some of people who are wealthy. He's for negotiating on prescription drugs. I think he can come up with something that will have the consensus, support of the president, support of House progressives. And we should give him that opportunity. And frankly, we should do it with respect. I mean, going and attacking him isn't going to get you the 51 votes.
I couldn't agree more.
You're willing to kiss his ass. You're kissing his. You're willing to kiss his ass.
But I do think. I mean, I guess this is everyone's gotten religion on this, because I think that, look, the strategy here, Senator Markey, was we're going to outline this thing and we're going to get Manchin and Sinema to come along, and you can't invent leverage over a person that you don't have. And I just want to say, for people watching this, I looked at polling from West Virginia today. Joe Biden's approval rating in West Virginia right now is 29%. Joe Manchin's 54%. Donald Trump's is like 65%.
Wow.
That's West Virginia voters. So, if you can get the West Virginia senator on board for $500 billion in climate spending, Senator Markey, that's not bad.
After all he did to this country,
Henry Waxman and I from California, we worked hard on a bill. We got it passed through the House in 2009, but a lot of talking, a lot of negotiation in the Senate, and it died. And that was 12 years ago. We've lost a lot of time. We cannot lose the next 10 years. So this is our opportunity to use climate, again, as the foundation. We can do this. But time is running out. Time is our enemy. Time is the friend of the climate denial fossil fuel industry. So if we take advantage of this, and again, Ro Khanna has done a great job leading on this in the House of Representatives and so many other progressives, we have to take a win here. We've got an opportunity for a big win, and we can add in other big victories that Ro. If we do it, this will be an historic victory for Joe Biden, for the Democratic Party, and for the planet, because the Democratic Party will be looking up at this threat of climate change, and we will be putting the solutions in place.
I just want to be clear here. Like, there's very tangible modeling on all this. This isn't. I mean, look, we don't know the future. There's also, to a certain degree, it's speculative. But here's the drop in emissions. Business as usual, just with the infrastructure bill or with this chunk. Could we put this up? Because I think, like, the 2030 goal, which is the dotted line there, the current trajectory doesn't get us there. If you can get the climate provisions in Build Back Better, we get there. Now, again, the future is unwritten. Lord knows what happens. But, like, our best guess is that is the thing that puts us on trajectory. And I want to ask you this, Congressman Khanna, because just to go back to sort of the thesis of the last block, and I know you're not going to pull back the curtain too much, but I'll ask it anyway. When you look back at the ACA and healthcare, right, a lot of that was this was unfinished business of the Democratic Party, because the last time there was a Democratic president with a Democratic House and Democratic Senate, it died, right? Clinton care didn't happen. An enormous setback. It was the dream of Harry Truman on forward through Democratic presidents to get some sort of healthcare. Waxman Markey, named after the senator on your screen right there with Henry Waxman, was the big unfinished business of domestic policy of the Obama administration. Dodd-Frank passed, the ACA passed, Waxman Markey dies in the Senate. My question, Congressman Khanna, is why wasn't it that thing that healthcare was back in 2009 this time around?
It was part of an economic message. I think part of it was Donald Trump had just won. All these folks we met had economic anxiety. Jobs had gone offshore. President Biden came and said, I've got to rebuild America. And part of that was the Green New Deal or climate new policies. But it was one piece of the puzzle. But I agree with you. It's the most important piece because it's irreversible. I mean, who knows when we'll have this moment again? And I actually don't think it's that complicated. If you give Senator Manchin the pen, I know some progressives don't like me saying this, but just give him the pen, let him come up with something. I think he's going to come up with something that is going to be extraordinarily much better than nothing.
Garbage.
And I think we can get
garbage.
He will
Stop
look
kowtowing.
good in history. Senator Markey, of course, already has a place in history, and Joe Biden will look good in history and will do something for the planet.
Is that the feeling in the caucus, Senator Markey, do you think, on your side?
I think once President Biden spoke and said that he wants to move on climate and then add in these other large chunks of policy that are critical to the well-being of American families, I think that our caucus will be moving in that direction. And if we don't, on climate, we miss, one, the ability to create millions of new union jobs in clean energy. Two, the ability to rectify the environmental justice to those most adversely impacted, mostly poor people. And third, we miss the opportunity to dramatically reduce greenhouse gases. So I think our caucus will move in that direction, and I'm glad that President Biden is giving us the leadership.
Once again, we've solved all the world's problems here in the final segment of All In. Thank you both, Senator Ed Markey, Congressman Ro Khanna. That was great.
Michael Steele, I'm going to start with you, and we're going to dive into what these threads mean, the things we've learned about today in the January 6th investigation. But as I was sort of reading all these different pieces today, we have to step back and talk about the simple fact that today's characters, Phil Waldron, Alex Jones, Carolyn Wren, I was trying to think of a way to describe how weird it is that they were advising an American president in the middle of a pandemic, an important hour for our country, the peaceful transfer of power, which ultimately was not to be. They wouldn't have vetted out to attend an event on the South Lawn in any normal White House. These are more than kooks and nuts. These are people with bizarre, way outside the norms views. Alex Jones is I think convicted of libel or slander against the Sandy Hook families. Phil Waldron is way outside the norm of any sort of ex-military advisor. And Carolyn Wren was a fundraiser and event planner whose name is on those permits. Talk about the kind of people around Trump, around his White House in the final days.
These are affirmers, Nicole. These are people who affirm the baser instincts of Donald Trump. These are individuals who the president would call at 1 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Instead of conducting the business and affairs of state, he's conducting the business and affairs of Trump Enterprises. And Trump Enterprises in the White House really boil down to how do we hold the power we have? How do we prosecute those who stand in our way? How do we get the advantage? And these individuals played the various roles. They weren't serious players in anybody else's orbit, for sure. I mean, who were these people before Trump, right? You didn't have members, Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz weren't calling these guys up, asking them for their advice and insights on policy. But for Trump, they filled that piece that he needed filled that would give him the reinforcements he needed to make the case. So when it comes to this executive order, Trump's executive order is a reflection of how Trump feels about this matter. He wants to put it in writing. And they're there to reinforce that. You've got the media guy with the radio program who can then go out and talk about it firsthand, right? And reinforce the messaging that Trump wants reinforced. So I think we have to look at it in that context. What this means for the January 6th Commission is now you've got a whole bevy of characters who have paper trails, phone records, conversations, etc., that reinforce and further fill out to Joyce's great piece the narrative of what was going on behind the scenes. And what you will find, I think, ultimately, is the president's role was stamped with his approval. All right, he stamped the roles that were played by various individuals out there with his own direct approval. And that's, I think, probably going to be the more damning part of this for Trump in the end. Despite that, he may not have said, yeah, y'all go out and take back the Capitol, but everything, all the other little pieces the conversations he had sort of create this picture.
I don't really eat pork, so I binge a lot on turkey bacon when I feel like it.
Diligently
and tonight I feel like binging on
together.
turkey bacon. I don't know why.
I mean, just listening to you, Michael Steele, I mean, there's sort of a good news, bad news result to what you're describing. And I guess the good news is that Bill Barr left before this really became an attempt to overthrow the will of the voters. He left it in the hands of Jeffrey Rosen, who said if Jeffrey Clark takes over, you know, not only will I walk out, but all the White House lawyers will walk out. But it also, I think, raises serious questions about what will be in these documents. I mean, if these folks are the likes of who Donald Trump was calling, and you know, as you're talking about him dialing for people who affirm his world, you can think of the people who call sort of the like radio hosts. I guess that's how old I am. I remember driving. You know, like, can you play this one for my old boyfriend? Like, that's how Trump was on the phone. Hey, man, can you send me over a coupon? I can't get Cipollone to do it, and Bartlett. You know, so he's reaching out. But that is a good point about what might be in these documents. Hey, this is the thing I talked to Trump about at 3 a.m. last night when he called me. He wanted you to look at it, right?
Yeah, and we've already seen that with the chief of staff conversations. We've seen that with Giuliani conversations, where you really begin to put the picture together. And Joyce, again, I go back to not just what she wrote, but go back and replay some of the conversations that she's already had with us from her prosecutorial perspective of what these people are already feeding into the narrative. Unwittingly, we watched on Ari Melber's program last week, 3 of the players just come on and just lay out the case. Oh yeah, we had this conversation. Yeah, I was involved with, you know, making sure this, that, or the other piece came together. So when you piece all of that together with what the commission already has, Nicole, what it points up is, yes, the role these individuals played, for sure. But more importantly, at the center of that was the President of the United States, who wanted his will exacted and executed on. That's what he wanted at the end of the day. He wanted those 11,781 votes, right? He wanted that done. He wanted Mike Pence to go up there and recount the vote or throw out what he needed to throw out, but he wanted his will to be acted on. And that's what all of these players, from the vice president down to whomever, those are the roles they played. And behind that was the ultimate puppet master, pulling the strings, directing the narrative, and trying to finish out the story.
And hitting dead ends. I mean, Julie, I want to show you something that I think Joyce writes about as well in this piece, and we're going to land on Joyce's piece in a second. But this is a public statement from Bill Barr on December 22nd, which was 2 days before he leaves, but I think it's 5 days after that EO was drafted, on the topic of seizing voting machines.
I see no basis now for seizing machines by the federal government. You know, a wholesale seizure of machines by the federal government.
Do you believe there's enough evidence to warrant a special counsel to investigate that, perhaps Sidney Powell or someone else?
Well, if I thought a special counsel at this stage was the right tool and was appropriate, I would name one, but I haven't, and I'm not going to.
So, Julie, 2 things that were in that executive order. The one executive order, the Times has some interesting reporting that there's a lookout for other executive orders that may be in that tranche of documents. But Barr there publicly at the podium of DOJ ruling out the seizure of voting machines and ruling out a special counsel, 2 things that were in that draft EO.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear, and you mentioned this just a little bit ago, that a lot of people around Trump, both in the White House and in the administration and the Justice Department, were pushing back against some of this stuff. But the dangerous thing that we're finding out the extent of right now is the number of people who were in his orbit who were really pushing these things. And this is the alternative that he wanted to pursue. So it's true that at the time, Barr was saying, no, there is no basis for doing this. There's no need for a special counsel. We're not going to seize machines. But the bottom line is, and you know this, that the president is the one who sets the tone in the White House. And what the president wanted to do was to find evidence of this fraud that he insisted had occurred. He was bringing in people, and people were being brought to him and allowed to have access to Trump at the time, who were spinning all sorts of wild theories about foreign election interference and what would need to be proved in order to get a special counsel named. And those were the people who he was enabling and who his enablers, including Mark Meadows, were bringing to him at the time. And so even though you did have some guardrails, and the guardrails, did seem to work in this case, in the case of the EO that we're talking about, potentially others that are out there that didn't get signed, it looks like we came close to the point where the president might have been considering signing those, and whether he came up with the idea himself or whether he was just turning to these people who were feeding him a steady stream of these kinds of alternatives. We know that this was under serious discussion at the highest levels of the White House, and that does give a really new perspective to what actually went on January 6th. I mean, we had reported, and some other news organizations reported in real time, that there was consideration of seizing machines and that the president wanted to find a way to do this, but somehow seeing it in black and white when Politico published that copy of the executive order on Friday really gave some chilling detail to what was actually being contemplated at the time, whether it was going to be DOD or the Department of Homeland Security. There were real discussions going on at the time about taking this unprecedented action.
Excuse me.
As tensions are ratcheting up between Russia and Ukraine, one Democratic congressman says his office is getting phone calls, repeatedly getting these phone calls, and they're from fans of Fox's chief propagandist, Tucker Carlson, saying that the U.S. should be siding with Russia over Ukraine. What, you may say? Well, you wouldn't be surprised if you watched his pro-Russia stance every night.
All of them are promoting war against Russia on behalf of our new and deeply beloved ally, the government of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is our most dangerous enemy, they scream. We can't let him hurt Ukraine. So it turns out Russiagate was actually more effective even than we'd realized. The Steele dossier has been debunked, but in Washington, the theme remains in force. Russia, 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 Russia is bad. Apparently, Ukraine's eastern border with Russia, unlike, say, our southern border with Mexico, is a sacred boundary created by God that must be protected at all costs, up to and including American lives. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries that don't care anything about the United States. Kind of strange.
Easy answer there. One's a democracy, the other's a brutal autocracy. The real question here may be, why is Rupert Murdoch allowing this anti-democratic BS on the air there? Let's talk about all of this now with Democratic Congressman Tom Malinowski of New Jersey. He is on the House Foreign Affairs and Homeland Security Committees, among others. First, sir, and thank you for being with us this morning, can you just tell us about these phone calls that your office is getting?
Yeah, sure. It really started yesterday. I was in my district office in New Jersey, and phones were ringing, and my district director came to me and said, I just spent an hour on the phone with like 4 people telling me that they'd watched Tucker Carlson last night, and why are we going to be going to war for Ukraine? Russia's making reasonable proposals for peace, and we should just do what Russia wants. And I knew this I knew this was happening. I've actually had many conversations with Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives about what's happening on Fox with respect to Russia, but this was the first time I started feeling it from my own constituents who were watching this garbage.
And so, I mean, the line is direct here. Tucker Carlson says something and they parrot it, right?
Yes, and I mean, that's not surprising, right? People watch TV and they pick up stuff. And in this case, we have such a partisan media environment where there are some people who only watch people like Tucker Carlson. And that's all they get night after night after night. And he's whipped them up into believing we're going to war, which is, as you just reported, not the case. We're not, President Biden is not promising to fight for Ukraine. We're just taking the side of a democracy that is being threatened with invasion by a dictatorship. Because, well, ever since World War II, it's been America's policy in the world that dictators shouldn't get to change borders with tanks. That's how World War II started. It's important to us not to let that happen.
I mean,
and, so it's really, really disturbing. And I think the main point here is we have to be united about this. And in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, so far, this is the good news, we're pretty united in standing by Ukraine, recognizing Putin as our adversary. But I think some of my Republican colleagues have got to come face to face with the fact that one of their chief propagandists, who's putting out this stuff to millions of their supporters every night, is effectively taking Russia's side.
So then let's talk about what you think Republicans should do, because, a federal judge said in a somewhat recent case that was, Fox and Tucker Carlson, Fox's lawyers defended Carlson effectively. They said basically people don't believe him. They know that it's not real. Clearly people do believe him. They're calling up your office and just repeating what he says. What do Republicans need to do?
They've got to call this out, and some of them have. There was a Republican congressman who went on Carlson's show a couple of months ago and debated him on Ukraine. It was very good, but it didn't stop Fox News from putting this out to people every night. And,
get out of there.
I got to say, I've raised this with some of my Republican colleagues in the last few days.
They're too nice.
And,
That's why I can't go into politics. Because they're too nice.
They pretend it's
they're
not
too
happening.
nice.
Because it's
maybe they need to be
uncomfortable
bullied.
subject. Of course, it's not just Tucker Carlson.
Maybe.
It goes back to the Trump administration.
Maybe they need to be bullied.
The president, and it's just hard for them to acknowledge there's a segment of their party that is siding with Russia, and I think they've got to acknowledge it and confront it, as uncomfortable as it is, because most of them actually, we agree on the policy. We agree the United States has got to defend democracies when dictators like Putin try to seize their territory by force. And if we're going to sustain that policy, we've got to communicate why that's important to American people, to every side of the political spectrum.
And
so Tucker Carlson, obviously,
I don't really listen to music or does watch TV for the sound. It's the vibration.
They're killed. His opinions are anti-democratic. I try to think about what would happen if the shoe were on the other foot here. What conservatives might say if, Barack Obama was saying something like this and media was supporting what he said.
Imagine if
the hypocrisy is amazing, but they don't give a fuck.
After 9/11, we're going on TV and saying, well, that was bad, but, the terrorists have legitimate grievances, and we should negotiate with them and give them what they want. Yeah, free speech, but I think that the American people would have no tolerance for that sort of thing. And I think, we've got to apply a similar standard here. Of course he has a right to his opinions. Everybody has a right to their opinions, but none of us have a right to have a primetime show on Fox News or CNN or any other network.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
As tensions are ratcheting up between Russia and Ukraine, one Democratic congressman says his office is getting phone calls, repeatedly getting these phone calls, and they're from fans of Fox's chief propagandist, Tucker Carlson, saying that the U.S. should be siding with Russia over Ukraine. What, you may say? Well, you wouldn't be surprised if you watched his pro-Russia stance every night.
All of them are promoting war against Russia on behalf of our new and deeply beloved. Unlike, say, our southern border with Mexico, is a sacred boundary created by God that must be protected at all costs, up to and including American lives. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries.
Here maybe, why is Rupert Murdoch allowing this anti-democratic BS on the air there? Let's talk about all of this now with Democratic Congressman Tom Malinowski of New Jersey. He is on the House Foreign Affairs and Homeland Security Committees, among others. First, sir, and thank you for being with us this morning. Can you just tell us about these phone calls?
And they say, what? I didn't know that. They pretend it's not happening because it's an uncomfortable subject. Of course, it's not just Tucker Carlson. It goes back to the Trump administration and the former president, and it's just hard for them to acknowledge there's a segment of the party that is siding with Russia. And I think they've got to acknowledge it and confront it, as uncomfortable as it is. Because most of them actually, we agree on the policy. We agree the United States has got to defend democracies when dictators like Putin try to seize their territory by force. And if we're going to sustain that policy, we've got to communicate why that's important to the American people, to every side of the political spectrum.
I'm sleepy.
So Tucker Carlson, obviously, he enjoys freedom of speech. This is America. He can say whatever the heck he wants. But in Russia, critics are poisoned. They're killed. His opinions are anti-democratic. I try to think about what would happen if the shoe were on the other foot here. What conservatives might say if, Barack Obama was saying something like this and media was supporting what he said.
Imagine if Democrats or liberals after 9/11 were going on TV and saying, well, that was bad, but, the terrorists have legitimate grievances and we should negotiate with them and give them what they want. Yeah, free speech, but I think that the American people would have no tolerance for that sort of thing. And I think, we've got to apply a similar standard here. Of course he has a right to his opinions. Everybody has a right to their opinions, but none of us have a right to have a primetime show on Fox News or CNN or any other network to be able to say this kind of nonsense to millions of people every night.
Well, I will say, here we are talking about him, which I think is exactly what he wants, and maybe that's why he says some of this craziness. Congressman...
Well, let's use it as an opportunity to talk about why it's important to stand by Ukraine here and why what Putin is doing is a threat to America's national security. Let's turn it around.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here to do that. Congressman Tom Malinowski, we appreciate you.
To side with fucking Russia.
With rebellion against him brewing, Boris Johnson summoned his cabinet this morning, hoping perhaps that a decision to lift COVID restrictions might help save him from a challenge. At Conservative headquarters, the party chairman faced the question all Tory MPs are now being asked.
Does he have your support? Of course he does. Of course he does.
Are you supporting the Prime Minister?
Yes.
And backbenchers too were called to Downing Street today.
The reason why I come out is so you can get a photo. Thank you very much. And then if you move across the road...
The febrile atmosphere has been heightened by Mr Johnson's former right-hand man Dominic Cummings. He says the Prime Minister was warned about the Summer Garden Party and last week lied to Parliament. Yesterday, a beleaguered Mr Johnson denied that.
Nobody told me, I'm absolutely categorical about this, nobody said to me this is an event that is against the rules, that is in breach of what we're asking everybody else to do, should not go ahead.
But back in 2020, you could only meet one person outside. Mr Johnson himself set those rules and 10 days before the party urged everyone to follow them.
You must obey the rules on social distancing, and to enforce those rules, we will increase the fines for the small minority who break them.
Prime Minister in.
So Mr Johnson's denials have not placated some in his party.
The country needs leadership at this time, and what it doesn't want is a governing party at war with itself. And right now, I'm afraid that I think to many people out there, that's what they're seeing. So I think the Prime Minister should be considering his position, but my position is that we need to wait and see what the facts were.
Is it all over, Prime Minister? Is it time to resign?
In a precarious position he left, heading for potentially crucial Prime Minister's questions. Just before he got there, cheers from Labour benches. The Conservative MP for Bury South, Christian Wakeford, had just crossed the floor to sit on the opposition benches.
Can I start by warmly welcoming the Honourable Member for Bury South to his new place and to the Parliamentary Labour Party. Mr Speaker, like so many people up and down the country, he has concluded that the Prime Minister and the Conservative Party have shown themselves incapable of offering the leadership and government this country deserves.
And as for Bury South, Mr. Speaker, as for Bury South, let me say to the right gentleman, Mr. Speaker, by all leave, may I say to the right honourable gentleman that the Conservative Party won Bury South for the first time in generations under this Prime Minister, with an agenda of uniting and levelling up and delivering for the people of Bury South. And Mr. Speaker, we will win again in Bury South at the next election under this Prime Minister.
No sign there of a Prime Minister thinking of resigning, but Sir Keir Starmer was enjoying this.
Bury South is now a Labour seat, Prime Minister.
The Labour leader then said Mr Johnson's defence did not sound credible.
It also requires the Prime Minister to ask us to accept that as he waded through the empty bottles and platters of sandwiches, he didn't realise it was a party. Does the Prime Minister realise how ridiculous that sounds?
Throughout the pandemic, people across government have been working flat out to protect the British public with huge quantities of PPE, so we can now make 80% in this country, with the biggest and most generous furlough scheme virtually anywhere in the world.
Perhaps the most damaging moment was when one of the most senior Tory backbenchers stepped in.
I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
And what matters now is how many Conservative MPs think the same and submit letters calling for their leader to go. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, it was a more combative performance from the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's questions in the Commons, and after that some of his supporters have been rallying round. One minister has been quoted as saying that the anti-Johnson rebels on the Tory backbenches are playing schoolboy politics, and we've also heard from the Prime Minister's press secretary saying if it does come to a confidence motion he would fight it. Asked if the Prime Minister still thinks he's the best man for the job, his press secretary said yes.
I like to have a modular.
You may remember the.
I like to have a. I like to have a modular setup.
The Justice Department has just spoken out in the most certain terms to date at the highest levels on the Giuliani-led fraudulent electors scheme, which MSNBC's Rachel Maddow and here on The Beat we have been reporting on extensively. Here's the news. The Deputy Attorney General saying in a new statement to CNN they are formally investigating the fake elector certifications. That would appear to be an escalation, at least according to what we know in public. I'm going to have more on that in a moment, but that's brand new. That is the news leading the hour. We'll get into the context. Meanwhile, the other developments that relate to all of this January 6th business is the committee now scouring those Trump documents that he failed to hide, losing at the Supreme Court. It was just last week. A lot's been going on. You may remember it was just last week that the Supreme Court handed down that big 8-1 decision, a stringing rebuke for Trump. And for people who say, how does this all work? Does anything matter? Well, the rule of law is holding. The Supreme Court made that ruling, and now here, days later, The committee is receiving and processing what looks to be about 770 pages of once secret documents from inside the inner sanctum and the upper levels
I had a
of the
top
Trump
secret
White
security
House.
clearance.
What's in there? Well, the short answer is we don't have all the text yet, but we do have reporting here on some of the examples, the categories, meeting notes at that time when they were preparing for January 6th. Drafts of the actual January 6th speech, which could be incriminating. We know Trump wanted to hide it, as well as high-level correspondence that could be emails, notes, communications from then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. The Meadows notes are believed to include information about the high-stakes briefings, calls, and Oval Office meetings at that time. Now, I want to be clear. Stay with me for a minute when you think about Oval Office meetings. I don't say it as disrespect to the president at the time to note that unlike other presidents, basically every other president, there's really no supposition or evidence that he was doing any governing work at that time. If there were Oval Office meetings, they are believed to have focused on his obsession at the time, which was trying to still steal the election and illegally stay in power after January 20th. So when I say Oval Office meetings, if that was about President Bush or Eisenhower or Obama, could be about anything. You might think, well, maybe a national security meeting. There's a reason why the investigators believe these Oval Office meeting notes, which we in the media don't have yet, contain information about the contemporaneous state of mind and planning about stealing the election. Now, we've also reported on the MAGA world witnesses who have tried to duck or resist these subpoenas. We're also seeing, though, the way that the process is working against the vast majority of people contacted. Today, a conspiracy theorist you've probably heard of, Alex Jones, admitting he went in. He was deposed by the committee, pleading the fifth almost 100 times. Another loss for a Trump ally, lawyer John Eastman, who was part of the memos, the paper trail that was trying to make these quasi-legal arguments that there were ways to stay in power. For example, the memo to Pence outlining what he thought would be some sort of method to overturn the election through Pence. He was also at the Willard Hotel during those key lead-up meetings, a judge ordering him to respond to the committee's subpoena for his emails. So that's an evidentiary request. He's also pled the fifth separately to about 150 questions. So you see that lawyers can't just walk away, even though they do have legal, valid privilege claims. Some are dodging and weaving, some are giving testimony, some are giving a version of testimony in television interviews. But they will be held to the same rule of law standard, and they all need to keep their bar memberships. Now, that brings us to a Trump aide and lawyer you may have seen recently. He was subpoenaed by the committee, and he also appeared on this program on Friday, Boris Epshteyn, admitting that he was involved in that fraudulent electors plot. He called it alternate electors. Headlines discussing whether he was busted, while he continues to insist that whatever he wanted to do would be legal.
Everything that was done illegally by the Trump legal team, according to the rules and under the leadership of Rudy Giuliani. We fought for the truth.
That's his view. He has every right to share it. To paraphrase A Few Good Men, the witness has rights. But you heard him there. Part of the claim that he is making and that Peter Navarro has made, who was also admitting plots to try to stay in power and overrule the election, is that they see this as somehow valid according to the rules, or somehow provided for by various statutes or constitutional measures. They're entitled to that defense. The news tonight is the feds are investigating this as a criminal matter. They will have the last word at a prosecutorial level about whether this was according to the rules, and if anyone is further charged, well, then it goes through our court system, presumed innocent, but you get your day in court and a trial will decide it.
Sure.
So I want to give you a little bit more of that news that was breaking that I mentioned at the very top. What we are learning today that we didn't know yesterday about how the feds view that plot. There were these fake or fraudulent or forged elector certifications. Rachel Maddow has done a lot of reporting on this, as I've mentioned here as well. And you go up the line, we're talking about the number 2 in the Justice Department, Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, who has now said, and this was reported first here by CNN, quote, "We've received those referrals. Our prosecutors are looking at those, and I can't say anything more on ongoing investigations." I can tell you that is a standard and proper statement when there are matters of major public interest, as you probably know, all the way back to James Comey and the Hillary emails or any number of stories. It will be practiced to sometimes confirm a probe without giving more information. But confirming a probe is bad news for anyone who is worried about being a person of interest or a target or a defendant of a criminal probe. Though Mr. Epstein has said on this program and elsewhere that they were doing it according to the rules. We have Congress looking at whether those rules were broken, and now the DOJ, a federal probe as well into the actual rioters. And that brings us to the Oath Keepers leader, Stuart Rhodes, as well as 9 alleged co-conspirators back in court today pleading not guilty to that serious charge of seditious conspiracy, and a judge is setting trial dates for later this spring and summer.
Ain't nobody sitting in here, so